So please excuse me, I'm going to wear these sunglasses because it's pretty glary today, even though it's overcast, so excuse me for doing this. I want to read, before I start, I'm going to give a brief commentary on this, some thoughts. I want to share some thoughts and on some recent developments which I feel a bit saddened about. And I'm not trying to white-splain it or anything like that. I don't even really know very much about the internal workings of Fred Hampton Leftists or anything. But I just wanted to sort of share my sadness about something which I think might actually end up becoming a much bigger thing. I just want to share the Black Panther Party's 10-point program, and then I want to just talk a little bit about some thoughts I've had. And then I also want to share something that Afeni from Fred Hampton Leftists said about this recent decision to remove Compton J from Fred Hampton Leftists. Now, Fred Hampton Leftists it's a mutual aid group as well as a podcast with a number of people in it, and there's 3 co-founding members. Compton J is one of them, the one who was removed. There's Rome, I don't know what his last name is, and one more person, forgive me, I think it's Nick. Nick is his first name. I'm not sure exactly what his last name is. So you can see that I don't know a whole lot about this particular group, but I was so happy when I saw that this group existed, and that's only in the last probably 6 weeks I became aware of them. So, and I think it's a great idea to start a group named after Fred Hampton, who was a most amazing Black Panther.
The FBI's role in the murder of the 21-year-old revolutionary. Fred Hampton was killed December 4th, 1969, when Chicago police raided his apartment and shot and killed him in his own bed. Black Panther leader Mark Clark was also killed by police in that raid. Authorities initially claimed the Panthers had opened fire on the police who were there to serve a search warrant for weapons. Evidence later emerged that told a very different story. The FBI, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, and Chicago police had conspired to assassinate Fred Hampton. Now, several hundred pages of FBI memos and reports obtained by historian and writer Aaron Leonard through a Freedom of Information Act request document that the director of the FBI's Domestic Intelligence Division, William Sullivan, and the head of the extremist section of the Domestic Intelligence Division, George Moore, both played key roles in planning the raid and the cover-up that followed.
Fred Hampton, who was a most amazing Black Panther from the Black Panther Party, had incredible ideas, an anti-imperialist, a socialist, everything pretty much you could possibly hope for, that could really have, if he had lived, if the FBI hadn't assassinated him in the 60s, could have been an amazing individual who really, really made things happen in a big way. He only lived till he was 21. He was assassinated at 21, as I said, by the FBI. And, that's what happened with anybody who was actually really making headway with getting people together, getting all these different groups together and creating a real people's movement. Sadly, that was not, it was totally unacceptable by a white supremacist patriarchal capitalist system. And so they found a way of knocking off, people like Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, and other people who were locking them up. Black Panthers still in prison. They came down really hard, They came down really hard on anyone who looked like they were going, any black person who looked like they were going to bring a movement together of all different kinds of movements. Martin Luther King Jr., when he started talking about poverty, economic poverty and militarism, that was the end of him. Talking about imperialism that's verboten. So these are things that, have been demonstrated. When I see, say, a group like Fred Hampton Leftists, are really good people wanting to and bring this together again and create a real movement, and then someone is turfed out who's a founding member, and I don't know anything much about him, Compton J, at all. I don't know what the inner workings of, or I haven't even barely watched anything that any of his podcasts. The excuse for his removal seemed very flimsy to the public. As a member of the public, to get rid of someone who's a founding member of a group seems fairly sad to me, for starters. And then saying that it was because they were simulcasting the Fred Hampton Leftist stream or something on their own YouTube channel. Seems like a very flimsy excuse to get rid of a founding member of a group. And that sows distrust with the public. That is a problem. Because now I, who was really enjoying that group, Fred Hampton Leftists, now I have a mistrust and wonder if that is going to end up leading to someone else who's also a founding member being tossed off, or anybody who disagrees with that particular decision of removing Compton J getting tossed off, or if it's going to or if the Fred Hampton Leftist is going to be corrupted and the principles of that group are going to be corrupted. And this is what happens again and again with groups. You know, that they start off with these really great principles, and then more people come in, and everybody has different positions on. They have, some people are there for their ego, some people are there with an agenda, a personal agenda. I've actually been in groups where we've been working towards a particular outcome, and there are people that just can't work in groups. They can't work as a group. They sort of seem to want to control a group rather than work with a group, with individuals. And that's not going to work, you know. It's not going to work. And I've been in a group like that where it started off working together, but I've discovered that there were a few individuals that are actually using the group for their own personal glorification and their own personal agenda of the particular issues that they wanted. And they undermined the group to move towards that personal agenda. Now, I'm not. This is totally different from what I'm saying about Fred Hampton Leftists. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. It seems like one particular person, a black person, didn't like Compton J, and it seemed like that was like that from the start. And maybe that's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons. But I don't know how they managed to get the cooperation of other people to remove that person. Maybe there's things that I don't know about that person was engaged in. Who knows? But I feel like the excuse, the explanation that Fred Hampton Leftists gave on Twitter to the public of why that particular individual was removed, that founding member, was a rather poor excuse, and seemed like if that was the reason, they could have probably worked that out. I don't know if they laid down the law already with him and said, you know, we don't want you simulcasting, but apparently there were other people that were doing the same thing, according to Compton J, so he was being singled out. So that's not transparent, and if it's not transparent, that sows mistrust. And now I sort of find myself wondering how the direction of that Fred Hampton Leftist, where are they going to go from there? And if you're going to use a name of a very sort of a well-known Black Panther Party person who was assassinated at the age of 21, but had incredible effect on people and had really great principles, was anti-imperialist, was socialist, and was into mutual aid and all of that. If you're going to use that name, you have to conduct that group in a way that probably Fred Hampton might have wished that to be conducted. I'm not sure removing someone on a flimsy excuse like that, which is what was put forward. I don't know if there are other things, maybe there were, but using that as that flimsy excuse to remove a founding member, I don't think that would be, I don't know, but I can't imagine that would be something that would be, seen as a good thing. And it does sow mistrust. And I want that group, Fred Hampton Leftists, who want to expand this into mutual aid and all the sort of things that were embraced by the Black Panther Party, they want to do that. Afeni from that group, she does mutual aid all the time, and she doesn't care about the branding or anything. She's in it for doing mutual aid. I said I was going to wear sunglasses, but I think I can manage probably to some degree without them, without squinting too much. Maybe I'll put them on in a bit. So Afeni sort of doesn't really care about the branding. She's in it for good reasons. That is, mutual aid to help communities, and that's what really gets people in, on the ground stuff. The revolution isn't going to happen online. It's not going to happen with people, with talking heads online. That can be a great way to educate people. That's one way of educating people. But the real revolution happens on the ground with people who probably never even hardly get on the internet. Life doesn't really begin and end on the internet. So people like Afeni from Fred Hampton Leftists, she doesn't care whether, and I'm going to play just a clip between her and Compton J talking with one another about this episode of him being removed and her feelings on that. she disagrees absolutely with the way it was done, and says, if we're going to have, if we're going to treat black people like this within this group, how are we going to expand it and bring in all sorts of different groups and bring in all kinds of different people, and people of color and white people, etc., when we can't even treat black people with sort of a, without bringing in all the awful things of this, how patriarchy is structured, and sort of fascistic kind of just removing people. So I'm going to share that little excerpt from a discussion Compton J had on his chat. He was talking about what he felt were the reasons why he was removed. He felt like it was mostly somebody did not like him because he seemed to be being singled out in that excuse, that they put on Twitter. And Afeni gave her, sort of thoughts on that. She was very clear that she was very unhappy with it. And, you see this again and again in groups. And Didi and I may even talk about this later in a live stream, because not so much focused on Fred Hampton Leftists in that group, but just groups in general. Groups in general. You get people who, like I've said, you get people with personal agendas, you get people with egos that want to control a group, and you get people who don't truly understand the foundational principles of that group, and they end up watering it down and moving it away from the original intent, and effectively is destroying it. And then you can get nefarious people who come into a group, and you could. I'm not casting any aspersions on the person who Compton J says doesn't like them. I'm not saying anything about them. I don't know them. I don't know anything about it. But I would imagine on the outside, if I was the establishment and I saw a group called Fred Hampton Leftists, and I saw them talking about, doing mutual aid on the ground, like Rome and Afeni, and that kind of thing, they looked like they were trying to adhere to principles of Fred Hampton and, say, the Black Panther Party. I mean, that's what I think they're trying to do. I can't be absolutely sure, but that's what it looks like. If I saw something like that and I was from the establishment, or if I was from the CIA, I would do some kind of COINTELPRO thing, and I would try and fuck that up big time. I would try and destroy that if I was the establishment, and if I was, say, the CIA. You would not want anything like that happening. You don't want anybody building any kind of real people's movement, particularly black people. So that's the other thing that can happen. You can get infiltrators into groups trying to destroy them, and we know that is happening. That is happening all the time. That's not some conspiracy theory. It's actually documented that there are infiltrators going into groups and agent provocateurs trying to mess things up and water down groups and then co-opt them. So that's something to think about too. But let's just have a look at the 10 principles of the Black Panther Party. And by the way, it's just starting to spit rain, so I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be talking about this. But just to say, I'm saddened. I only just come across this group about 6 weeks ago, and I was so happy to see it. And I was so happy to see that they have these motivations and these principles they want to adhere to. And then suddenly to see this happening, I just thought, oh, that's such a shame. Now I'm going to have to move away from, it's just starting to rain now, so I might have to continue this on inside. So, okay, so here are I had to move inside because it's raining, and there's a little cat trying to knock over this tripod. So here are the 10-point principles, 10-point program of the Black Panther Party. 1, we want freedom. We want the power to determine the destiny of our black community. 2, we want full employment for our people. 3, we want an end to the robbery of the capitalists of the black and oppressed communities. 4, we want decent housing fit for shelter of human beings. Sorry, there's some cracks in this screen, so it's hard to read it properly. 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present-day society. 6, we want all black men to be exempt from military service. This was during Vietnam. That was during Vietnam this was written. 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. Isn't that amazing? This is like, it's like 55 years ago or something, or, and it's still going on. We want freedom of all black men held in federal, state, county and city prisons and jails. 9, we want all black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in court by a jury of their peer group or people from their black communities, as defined by the Constitution of the United States. and 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. Well, they sound like fairly sort of decent and basic demands, really. But there you go. Black people are still being killed at 3 a day or something like that, 3 times more than white people or whatever in the United States. And there's all the crime bill, sort of basically the incarceration, the mass incarceration of black people and so forth. But anyway, so they were the basic, this is the basic program. That was the basic program of the Black Panther Party. And I think that even though that was written a long time ago now, it still applies to a strong degree. And so, I imagine that those Fred Hampton leftist people, most of them, or all of them hopefully, would probably agree with that and have an expansion of those because, this is a 55 years ago, so expansion of those aims and, they're anti-imperialists, they're anti-capitalists, and that's a great thing. And that's why it's sad to see the sort of what could be the disintegration of that group because now there is a mistrust. Hopefully they will put in some rules that this won't happen again, that somebody will just be removed and a flimsy excuse being given. I mean, if that's the only reason that Compton J was removed from Fred Hampton Leftists, that could have been sorted out. And it also should have applied to everybody because I think there were other people who were also doing simulcast stuff. So there's more, obviously there must be more to it, and if there isn't, then that is just a really sad excuse. And if there are more to it, it would have been better if they hadn't given any excuse at all on Twitter because it really just kind of drags, as Margaret Kimberley has mentioned on that Twitter thread, it kind of humiliates that person and that should have been worked out internally. But then there is the argument that because they are viewer funded, that the public need to know why something was done. I would have liked to have known when I saw that yesterday that he'd been removed. I sort of thought that was very sad and it made me sort of worry about that group. And I would like to know really what is the real reason. And it's not good enough if someone doesn't like somebody. That is not a good reason to get rid of someone. And I'm not sure why people went along with it. So there must be more to this, or maybe there isn't. But anyway, my reason for commenting, and like I say, I wasn't trying to white-splain anything. I'm not trying to sort of, I just wanted to express my sadness to see the possible beginnings of disintegration of that group if that's the way they're going to conduct their membership, particularly founding members. I've seen enough in my time of founding members of groups who had a really good intention for the group, and then you get in some more people and then it gets watered down. And I'm not saying that the new people watered it down, but this is what my experience watching other groups. You see the new members come in, they don't really have good core principle understandings they don't have good understandings of core principles of that group, and they end up sort of trying to shift it away from those core principles, and before you know it, the group doesn't represent at all what the founding members intended it to represent. And sometimes it's because people have egos and they want to control the group, and sometimes it's people wanting to mess up the group, and sometimes it's people who, like I say, they just don't really understand the core principles of the group, and they end up watering it down, and then eventually it becomes something that it was never meant to be, and it effectively basically destroys the whole purpose. And that's the tricky thing about groups, because groups are made of people, aren't they? The groups are made of individuals, and individuals, even if sometimes you don't realize it, everybody has some sort of agenda. Some are good agendas, some are very egocentric agendas, and they don't seem to know how to work with a group. I find that is a big problem today, just from my experiences over the decades working with people, that people don't seem to know how to work in a group. They don't seem to know how to work with others and to be able to discuss things and to be able to keep to core principles. They're sort of, it's like there always seems to be in a group somebody trying to be the ego, the center of attention. It's in some ways human nature, just sort of wanting to be important. And, and it's really sad to see. And that's why, to be really frank with you, I've worked in enough groups now that it's enough that it's put me off working with groups. So that's why I work as far as this goes anyway. I've worked in groups before. When I have to work with a group, I do, like when we were doing trans kid legislation, positive trans rights legislations in Tasmania. I worked with a group, and that was not a good experience for me. watching the some individuals in that process. And I'm not going to say any more about that, but that's how I felt about that. And but I do work with groups when I am feeling like it has to be done, but I tend to avoid altogether doing that because it always seems to end up a shit show. Oftentimes, it's rare that groups don't end up becoming a shit show, and that's Aoife with his little bird be safe collar on. No, we don't like to dress up our cats. Hey, Aoife. Anyway, so that my experience of groups is not a good one, and so I wish the best for that group, for Fred Hampton Leftists. I want them to succeed. I think it's a great idea, not only doing education via podcasts and stuff, but also doing on-the-ground mutual aid like Afeni and like Rome do, and I'm sure there are probably others too. And I feel that, and I wish well for any group that it doesn't end up disintegrating and falling apart and infighting and all that kind of thing. But in particular, I just felt the need to say something about Fred Hampton Leftists because I was so happy to see something like that. It's so important. I feel like that probably one of the most significant groups that I've seen in recent times. Well, they're not even in recent times for a while now. And I want it to succeed. I really do. So that hence I just felt the need to say something. And I wish every single one of them the best. And I hope that they stay safe. I hope there is no infiltration of that particular group, which it would be a major target, just even the name of that group. I hope that they keep to the core principles that Fred Hampton always espoused and in his short life. And the integrity. I hope that they are always anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist, because if you're going to take a name like Fred Hampton, that's a really high bar. So you have to aspire to the principles he espoused. I mean, not getting into worshipping of a character, of course. Nobody should be put up on a pedestal and worshipped or anything, but just the principles and the principles of the Black Panther Party, all those different. But Fred Hampton in particular, just, I hope that they always stick to those principles and try and work things out within the group, and keep it, for want of a better word, classy. Keep it real. Anyhow, so that's all I wanted to say. And I'm going to show this clip from Afeni and Compton J talking about this because I think what Afeni says is something important, and that's one of the reasons I kind of was excited about this Fred Hampton Leftist. And in particular, I find Afeni to be, she's openly a lesbian, a feminist, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, pro-Palestinian, all of that, all the good things that she is. She's a great speaker, and I think she's someone who I admire, and hence I wanted to share some of the things she said when she was talking to Compton J about his removal from Fred Hampton Leftists. So thanks for watching. Now stay tuned for this little excerpt.
Did you see the story, how I explained everything?
Yeah, I saw the story or whatever. Here's the thing, right? I'm not even gonna sit up here and mince words. Like, I fuck with FHL. I fuck with, the concept of what FHL is supposed to be and all of that good stuff. And I've been very honest and open about, my disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
Very openly, at least behind the scenes in the chats and everything. But this shit is unacceptable. I'm so mad. Like, I can't even explain like how mad.
What were you? So when I saw you in the replies, that's when you had first heard about this?
Like, literally, so I had heard something, like, so they said something in the chat earlier, and I was like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Like, what's happening? And no one would answer my question. And I wasn't going to be on the roundtable today, and I also wasn't going to be in the meeting because I was filming for Ryan Knight's show. And I said that. So like now I'm just like, if y'all were gonna make a decision this big, you should have said like, no, everybody needs to be here. Mm-hmm. Because I definitely would have not fucked with that. Like, it doesn't really make any sense to remove somebody just because they simulcasted. And the thing about me is like, I'm not out here like trying to do some fucking branding the movement. Like, it's not about FHO, it's not about Freedom Fighters DC, it's not about the populist voice, it's not about Jen Perlman's show. It doesn't matter who gives a fuck about the brand, bro. It's not about the brand. It is about the fact that we are organizing a real movement, as an abolitionist, me personally, I believe in transformative justice.
Here's a definition from transformharm.org, and I don't know anything about that site. I'm not endorsing it. I just thought this was not a bad definition. Transformative justice, TJ, is a political framework and approach for responding to violence, harm, and abuse. At its most basic, it seeks to respond to violence without creating more violence and or engaging in harm reduction to lessen the violence. TJ can be thought of as a way of, quote, making things right, end quote, getting in, quote, right relation, end quote, or creating justice together. Transformative justice responses and interventions. 1, do not rely on the state, e.g. police, prisons, the criminal justice system, ICE, foster care system. Through some TJ responses, do not rely on incorporate social servicing like counselling. 2, do not reinforce or perpetrate violence such as oppressive norms or vigilantism. And most importantly, 3, actively cultivate the things we know prevent violence such as healing, accountability, resilience, and safety for all involved. State responses to violence reproduce violence and often traumatize those who are exposed to them, especially oppressed communities who are already targeted by the state. It is important to remember that while many people choose not to call the police, many communities can't call the police because of reasons such as fear of deportation, harassment, state-sanctioned violence, sexual violence, previous convictions, or inaccessibility. TJ was created by and for many of these communities, e.g. Indigenous communities, Black communities, immigrant communities of color, poor and low-income communities, communities of color, people with disabilities, sex workers, queer and trans communities. It is important to remember that many of these people and communities have been practicing transformative justice in big and small ways for generations, trying to create safety and reduce harm within the dangerous conditions they were and are forced to live in. For example, undocumented immigrant women in domestic violence situations, disabled people who are being abused by their caretakers and attendants, sex workers who experience sexual assault or abuse, or poor children and youth of color who are surviving sexual abuse, have long been devising ways to reduce harm, stay alive, and create safety and healing outside of state systems, whether or not these practices have been explicitly named as, quote, transformative justice, end quote. And transformative justice is an abolitionist framework that understands systems such as prisons, police, and ICE as sites where enormous amounts of violence take place, and as systems they were created to be inherently violent in order to maintain social control. Transformative justice works to build alternatives to our current systems, which often position themselves as protectors while simultaneously enacting the very forms of violence they claim to condemn. So there's more in that article, but that's sort of the gist of it.
I believe in transformative justice. Right. Why are we mirroring the system that we say that we're fighting against by just automatically canceling people and removing people in a non-democratic way without saying anything to the whole group or explaining this shit? Nobody explained shit. They just did it, which is some weird ass, fascistic ass, authoritarian ass shit, and I don't fuck with that. And I was just in the chat going the fuck off because I don't even go like that. Like, and if they try to kick me out of FHL, I don't give a fuck because at the end of the day, like, I organize in real life outside of the internet. And if we're all supposed to be fucking organizing in real life outside of the internet, then stupid shit like this would not be fucking happening. Period. Like, they made me mad as hell.
I mean, your reaction is like the reaction I had, and Nick, to be quite frank with you, Nick was the one that was like, "This seems to be rash. This seems to be like an overreach." Like, so he had the same reaction, and I'm not sure if Rome did, or maybe that's why he felt torn, because he was like. He was just holding his head down, like shaking his head, and he was like, "Nah." He was like, "I got to think about this." You know, Rome. I got to think about this, and then he was like, "Yeah, this don't."
There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to contemplate. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing.
Right.
It's either we believe in our principle of transformative justice. It's either we are going to stand together as an organization, or we are not. Either we're going to believe in transparency and believe that we are building the system that we are trying to actually be a part of, or we're gonna mirror the shit that we're trying to fucking dismantle. But we can't do fucking both. We cannot do both. And I'm highly disappointed. And Jackie unfollowed me.
What?
I don't know how long ago that happened. I'm not gonna lie to you.
When?
I don't know how long ago. I just went on her page just now and she wasn't following me anymore. I don't know how long. I mean, Jackie has like not been liking me. Like that's been a thing. But
listen, I don't want to do a Jackie bashing, but yeah,
I don't understand like what kind of time are we on? And like people will say this is messy or whatever. Like this is not about being messy. This is not about the drama. Like Nick says, it's about the issue. The issue here is that this was done in a undemocratic and a very rash way. There was no transparency for the whole group. And on top of that, I did not like, if I didn't understand what was going on, and like other people in the chat didn't understand what's going on, and y'all having secret fucking meetings trying to figure out what the fuck going on. Like, what the fuck? Like, no, like say that shit out in the open, because whenever I have a problem with any of y'all, I say it out in the open. Why can we not all just be like that with each other? If they had an issue with you simulcasting or whatever, which again I think is fucking stupid, because like what are we being so territorial for? Like, what are we?
Right. That's why. I mean, this is why I was kind of hesitant to bring you on here, Afeni, because I didn't want you to have be involved. And if Jackie is unfollowing you, it's like that's ridiculous. It's like So I'm sorry about that. I hope this doesn't
I mean,
cause any further issues with you. Like maybe you're up next. Maybe. For doing this, maybe we'll see. But outside of that, let's say, listen, none of this I'm doing is a plea for me to rejoin. Like I'm literally have plans. I always have contention plans, and I had contention plans in particular, Afeni, because Jackie runs FHL. People don't know business-wise. She controls FHL,
which is
right. And she doesn't like me. And like I have said several times, not just today, not just yesterday, not just this week, not just last week, several times that Jackie doesn't like me. And she's treating me unfairly several times. And it's just kind of glossed over. And even today, I was screaming it. How is no one seeing that this is a setup, that Jackie is just getting rid of me because she doesn't personally like me? And, but anyway, Afeni, I do want to move from this. Talk about what you did today. Can you talk about the interview you did today, or you have to wait for it to release?
I mean, I was on Amped Up podcast with Ryan Knight. I talked about all the shit that I usually talk about. Fuck the government. Fuck weird ass, snitch ass, rat ass shit, like what's happening right now. And like, I understand you want to move on from it, but I want to be very, very clear here. Like, I want to be very, very, very clear here on Afeni's position. Here's the thing. Like, I want to do this work in the most effective way possible. The reason why I joined the reason why I started doing the podcast to begin with was because when Nick and y'all came to me, it was like, oh, well, the messaging and all that stuff. I've never wanted to be a podcaster. I've never wanted to have a show. This is not what the fuck this is not the type of time I was on. So if they kick me out of FHL, that's fine because I was organizing before this. I'm going to continue to organize after this. The planning committees that I'm on, that shit's not going to stop because I'm not on FHL no more. And if people want me on their show, if people want me on their podcast, guess what? Niggas are going to fucking hit me up in my DM and they're going to get me on their podcast. So regardless of whether or not I'm on FHL or not, like, shit is what it is. But I am not about to sit up here and pretend like this shit is okay. And regardless of whatever conversation they want to try to have behind the scenes, I'm not intimidated by none of that shit. And at the end of the day, there's nothing any of these motherfuckers can say to me that would discount my work or my worth or like my belief in this movement or my fucking place in this movement. Like, period. So, like, I want to be very clear. Like, I hopped on this fucking live full well knowing that I am inserting my 2 cents and where it might unnecessarily not belong. But at the same time, if we're all first of all, my voice didn't get heard in the meeting. So now at this point, I feel like my platform was taken away from me to speak. Because if I was in the meeting, I would have told you.
You would have been saying this, yeah.
Like,
yeah,
what?
You would have been saying this, yeah.
Like, what? This is the same shit I would have said. And it's the same fucking disagreements that I've been having in the chat. I openly disagree with you motherfuckers all the time. So this is not new. But at the end of the day, if y'all want to do shady shit, if y'all want to play dumb games, y'all going to win dumb fucking prizes. So this is me holding my network accountable to the bullshit that they just did. Regardless of whether CJ wants to be back on FHL or not is his fucking choice. But we should absolutely retract this shit. We should absolutely retract this shit. And if y'all have an issue with me saying that, then I don't give a fuck. Period. Because I meant it. And I promise, and I know for a fact that if we were a network that met regularly, and if we any of us had ever met in person, the energy that is had over these screens would not be had. Period.
So you know what, Afeni? I've said that I've been not screaming. I've been saying this over and over. We do not meet enough. For what we're trying to do, I don't see how we're not meeting every week. For what we're trying to do, we need to be meeting, and I've been saying this. So I'm with you on that concept that, building that camaraderie through meeting, just think about like the meetings you do with your mutual aid groups. You have great camaraderie, and that's because you meet very frequently and you don't miss those meetings. I know, because I tried to have you on my show and you couldn't make it. He was like, no, I'm doing my mutual aid. And I was like, no, that's more important than a show. Doing mutual aid, that's just straight facts. So yeah. Afeni, I'm gonna end the stream. It's 11 o'clock where I am. My wife is like waiting for me to get to bed. I got to get up early, but I do want to thank you for coming on here and giving your 2 cents. This is what you would have said in the meeting if you attended. So thank you for coming on and speaking. But any last words for you?
I'm just saying, like, I'm so sorry. Like, this is bullshit. Like, this is all bullshit. And at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Like, retract this shit. Take this shit back. Let's go back to the drawing board and figure this shit the fuck out. Because at the end of the day, let's be very clear. And I want to make sure everybody hears me when I say this. Because I'm going to say it with my whole chest because I don't give a fuck. We cannot be kicking black folks out of a group that is called Fred Hampton Leftists. Okay, we have a lot of, at the end of the day, I fuck with my allies. I fuck with my co-conspirators, my white allies in the movement. I'm down with you. Okay. We are called the Fred Hampton Leftists. The Black Panther Party was a monolithically black organization that built rainbow coalitions across racial lines. So if we are not sticking with black folks first, then we have immediately fucked up. Period. We've immediately fucked up. So we need to fix this shit. And if y'all don't want me on FHL anymore, I really don't give a damn. Just make sure you slide into my DM and don't do no childish ass shit. Make sure that you have enough, maturity and bravery and courage to say that shit to my motherfucking face. Please, I beg.
That, I mean, I can't top that. I love you, Afeni. Thank you for coming on. And I mean, you're getting the fire flames all throughout the comments. So thank you for the comments, everybody. I'm sorry I didn't get to them. I just kind of wanted to focus on the story. But yeah, we love you too. So, all right. So I'm going to end this live stream. Thank you for watching. Afeni, just stay on just for a couple seconds.